Welcome back to HMIS New User Training. In this module, we'll discuss interim updates or making updates for a client's record. Now, interim updates are designed to record changes after a client's initial enrollment. So if you meet a client on, let's say, January 1st of the year and you enroll them, interim updates are to record changes in February, March, April, and so forth. Now, as it says, we want to make sure that data correction occurs at entry, but any actual updates to a client's record, information such as income, non-cash benefits, and so forth, will occur at interim updates. As you can see, there's a little icon called interims, and this is where we're going to update and make updates after entry. Now, the program elements that we will focus on in this training are what we call program data elements for income, non-cash benefits, health insurance, disabilities, and domestic violence questions. Your agency may have additional custom questions, and you would complete those according to your agency's direction and specifications. Now, there are slightly different processes for questions that are sub-assessments versus text fields, and we'll review each one of those in turn. Now, an important note is that we always want to try to work from the HUD verification button, which we can see pointed to with the arrow right there. This will make the process a lot easier when making updates during the interim update session. We also want to avoid using the magnifying glass if at all possible. The magnifying glass can be useful for reviewing historical information, but when we're actually making changes, the HUD verification button is the better way to go. In addition, for total monthly income specifically, we want to make sure that we're completing the total monthly income and income from any source text fields as well. We want to make sure that the sub-assessment of the HUD verification button, as well as those total monthly income and income from any source fields, are consistent and accurate. Now, we will jump into Service Point in the training site to review this in more detail, but as a note, just for those who like to see it on the screen first, after you click the HUD verification button, you'll want to review all the options to see whether or not a client's receiving it. So we'll want to review this yes column as well as this no column. We'll just want to make sure it's accurate. If it's not accurate, well, we need to update the value. To do that, we'll use this pencil icon on the left-hand side to the left of the income that we're trying to update to go ahead and change those values. Now, a couple of important things to keep in mind, which we'll discuss in more details when we're actually on the Service Point training site. After we click that pencil icon, we only want to update blank fields. We do not want to change data that is already present, which we'll show in just a moment. We'll also end the old record, so the end date is going to be the day before the interim update. So if you're updating the client's data on, let's say, September 1st, the end date of the old record would be August 31st. Please, as a note, you may have to end multiple records. And after you end the old record, you'll create a new record and a pop-up will appear so you can go ahead and add the amount of income the client is receiving. But let's jump into Service Point and we'll help make this a little more clear. So we're now on the training site, the Service Point training site, and the first thing we want to do is locate our client profile. So I'll click on the Clients tab to the left. I happen to know my client's ID number, so I'll go and submit that. And we'll want to navigate to the Entry Exit tab. So with interim updates, we're just updating the record for a client who's already enrolled in our program, and my client has been previously enrolled in this HMIS training program back on October 1st. We will not be working from this pencil icon for Project Start because we're recording actual updates to the client's record. To create an interim update, we'll click on this icon under this field Interims, and we'll get a pop-up. We'll click Add Interim Review, and we'll select the interim review type. So for this training, we'll start with Update. We will cover annual assessment later on in the training. The process is the same, but we'll cover that later. For now, we'll stick with Update as our option. And then we'll click Save and Continue. Now this will take us to the Update Assessment and will show us the different ways in which we can make updates to the client's record. Now, we'll start with Income. As previously said, we want to work on the HUD verification field specifically. Now, the HUD verification field will make it a little bit easier to make sure that we are managing the record and its information correctly. So we'll click on this. And we'll start by reviewing all of this data here, the yes and the no data. And we'll want to make sure that we want to update or toggle any changes that are necessary. As an example, we might say that the client is no longer receiving alimony or other spousal support. And we'll want to change this from a yes to a no. In order to do that, we'll click on the pencil icon to the left. So here's the record we're changing. We'll click the pencil icon to the left. And as mentioned in the PowerPoint, we want to make sure that we're not changing any fields with data. We're only updating blank fields. So we see that this income amount is already present. We are not going to change that because there's already data there. The start date, there's already data there, so we are not going to change it. The receiving income source, that data is already present, so we're not going to change anything there. We will only update blank fields, in this case, the end date. Now, we want to make sure this is 1 day before the update is being made. So I see that our review date up here, sort of grayed out, is 10/10/2024. So our end date should be 1 day before 10/09/2024. And what this is doing, it's saying that this information is no longer accurate as of yesterday. So this closes out old records. This closes out inaccurate records as of the day before. And now we'll click Save. And what that does, it toggles this field to alimony and other spousal support to incomplete. This allows us then to go ahead and click No for this option. And so now we have an accurate record as of today saying they're not receiving this income source. Let's do it in the opposite way. Let's go from a no to a yes for the client as well. So let's say the client is now indicating they're receiving child support, and this no answer is no longer accurate. So the same process, we'll locate our source of income. We'll click the pencil icon to the left, which will create a pop-up. And again, we will not change data that's already present. So this receiving income source says, no, we're not going to change it because data is already there. We won't change the start date because it's already there, but we do see the monthly amount is blank as well as the end date. Now, the monthly amount in this case will be 0, and that's to be consistent with this no here. If the receiving income source is no, that means there's $0 being earned. Now the end date, again, is going to be 1 day before our review date, which I can see up here is 10/10/2024. So 1 day before would be 10/09/2024. And what this is saying is that this old record entered not by you, entered by somebody else's record is no longer accurate. And so you're saying we're going to close out this record of information as of yesterday because it is no longer applicable. And we see it toggles once again to incomplete, which allows us to go ahead and select yes. Now for the income sub-assessment, when you select yes, you do receive another pop-up just to indicate how much the amount of money being received with child support. So all we have to do is complete our monthly amount of $600. And in this case, I'll leave the end date blank because the client is currently receiving this income as of 10/10 and will continue to receive it going forward until a future date when there might be another interim update. So we'll click Save here. Now we'll jump back to the PowerPoint real quick to make a couple of other notes. Now we're back at the presentation, and we just want to make a note on multiple records. When updating sub-assessment information such as income, health insurance, non-cash benefits, and disabilities, you may see old incorrect data entry. So when you're updating a client's record, you may have to end multiple old records before you're able to make a successful update. This occurs when prior agencies have all used different or incorrect data entry methods, and now we're cleaning up records to make sure our client's information is accurate. We'll jump back into Service Point to see what that looks like, but this is a really important point that we all may run into once in a while. So I'm back on my client's record here, and so my client in this case, in this scenario, is also reporting that they have workers' compensation in the past, but as of this interim update, they're letting me know that they are no longer receiving the source of income. So we're going to use the same process. We'll identify that source of income. We see that the yes answer is no longer accurate. So we'll click on that pencil icon to the left. And again, we're not going to change any information that's already present. So we're not going to change the dollar amount, the start date, or the receiving income source. We're just going to fill out the blank field, which is the end date here. We'll do it 1 day before our review date. So our review date up here is 10/10/2024. So the day before is 10/9. And this indicates that a previous agency recorded that the client was receiving workers' compensation, and you're saying this is no longer accurate as of 10/9/2024. I'll click Save. But unlike the previous records, it's still saying as yes, and it's not going to incomplete. So this means that in the past, another agency also recorded a separate and different record for this client. We want to make sure we close out that record as well to make sure our information on their profile is correct. So it's going to be the same process, it's just repetitious. We'll again identify workers' compensation. We know that yes is no longer accurate. We'll click on that pencil icon. And we see that's a different monthly amount, so indicating there was a different agency also recording the information without making the proper updates using the HUD verification button. Our process remains exactly the same though. We're just going to close out this old record. So information that's already there, we will not touch, and we'll only complete the information that's blank. In this case, the end date. Again, we're going to select 10/9/2024 because it is one day before our review date of 10/10/2024, and we'll click Save. And now we see it actually automatically toggles to no. So this means the previous agency did record that the client was not receiving workers' compensation. That is accurate, so we can completely and totally leave that there. So the last part is we'll exit here. And then we just want to make sure that our total monthly income and income from any source fields are also complete. So we want to make sure that this is yes. If there's any yes values here, we want to make sure that total monthly income from any source is a yes. And we do see the client is receiving some income here. And we want to go ahead and make sure that we update this total monthly income button right here. You can use this view gross income. That is accurate if you're doing the data record entry as of today. If you're doing data entry, historical data entry 1, 2, or 3 years ago, that information may not be accurate. But in this case, I've done a separate tally on my notepad next to me, and $800 is correct based on the information I've seen. So I'll make sure that this is updated correctly. And this is how we update total monthly income. Now, we'll go and review non-cash benefits from any source, as well as covered by health insurance. We'll jump into PowerPoint real quick before giving examples of how to run those sub-assessments as well. In our presentation, as you can see in the slide, the process for updating health insurance and non-cash benefits will mostly be the same as income. Again, we'll be using the HUD verification button, and we will not be using the magnifying glass. As noted previously, just like income, we'll only update blank fields and we will not change data that's already present. What we'll do instead is we'll end old records before adding a new record. This is the same process for health insurance as well as non-cash benefits and should be very familiar based on the income training as well. We'll jump into Service Point and take a closer look at updating those sub-assessments as well. And here we are back in Service Point. We'll start with non-cash benefits. And as a note, we always want to make sure that we're updating this field associated with the sub-assessment itself. So our process will be to click the HUD verification button. And we'll once again review all the values for yes and no. So if we wanted to change a value, let's say in this case, the client's now reporting that they are receiving TANF childcare services. We want to switch that from a no to a yes. So we'll locate our record. We'll click the pencil to the left. And again, we're not going to change any fields already there. So we're not going to change the start date, the receiving benefit, or anything of that sort. We're just going to add the end date here. So again, it's going to be one day before our review date. Our review date is 10/10/2024. So the day before is 10/09/2024. And we'll click Save. But we see that this client is now reporting they are receiving these services. And even though I ended that record, I still see a value of no. So this is like the income sub-assessment where sometimes you may have to end multiple records before the information is correct. What you're effectively doing is correcting multiple records from data entry from old project days or old agency data entry. The process remains exactly the same, but we'll keep on going and ending old records until we get accurate information. So again, we'll locate that record there. We'll click the pencil icon. And again, we'll go ahead and enter only data for fields that are currently blank. The end date was going to be one day before our review date. So our review date, as previously noted, is 10/10/2024. You can always see that up here at the top of the screen. And our end date will be one day before. So now I've closed out this record from the data entry from a second agency that just re-entered the data unnecessarily. So we'll click Save. And once again, I see the answer still defaulting to no. So that means there's yet another record or another agency in the past that had the data entry sort of done unnecessarily. So we're just going to go and use the exact same process. We'll identify that non-cash benefit source. We'll click the pencil icon. And again, we'll add an end date for the day before the review date. We see that once we close out all previous records, the client slate is clean at this point, and now we have an incomplete saying that we can update it appropriately. So as of 10/10, we can say yes, they are receiving that information, or they are receiving that non-cash benefit. The process is very similar from a yes to a no. For food stamps here, if they say they're no longer receiving that benefit, you would just take the pencil icon to the left of the record. You would end the previous record. So this is saying that, again, we're only updating fields that are blank. We're not updating fields that have information present. We never change values that are already present. We're just saying that previously this client reported they had food stamps between these dates, and that's no longer true as of yesterday. We'll click Save, and it toggles to incomplete. Luckily in this case, there was no old or multiple records to correct, and we'll just click No. Once that's complete, we'll click Save and Exit. And we'll keep this as yes because we can see that they are receiving some non-cash benefit. So the process for covered by health insurance is the same. We'll also be mindful of this drop down here, but we'll click on HUD verification, and we'll say that this client is now reporting they're receiving private pay health insurance as well. So our process is just like non-cash benefits. We'll go ahead and locate that record. We see it's currently a no. We want that to be a yes. We'll click the pencil icon to the left. Again, we'll only fill out fields that are incomplete. Now, in this one, we have a couple of optional fields. So if yes to other, specify, which is not applicable here. And these two questions are HopWest specific. So for the vast majority of people, this will not be completed. For HOPWA projects, we do have a HOPWA training that does go over those fields in more detail. But for the fields that are already present, the covered, health insurance type, and start date, we do not change data that is already present. We only update blank fields. So again, our end date will be 1 day before our review date. Again, the review date can be found up top, 10/10/2024. So the day before is 10/9/2024. And we'll click Save. What this says is that this client previously recorded they did not receive this income source, and as of 10/9/2024, that was no longer true. So we see it toggles to incomplete. Luckily, we don't have multiple records to fix, which is fantastic. We'll just click Yes here, and we'll click Save and Exit. We'll want to make sure that this yes is consistent. So this says yes, and we do see the client does have yes values, so we're good to go. Our final sub-assessment is disabilities. So we'll take a quick look at that as well. So the same general guidance for the disability sub-assessment is true as is the previous sub-assessments as well. We'll want to work from the HUD verification button, as that will be the easiest way to work and manage the data correctly. So we'll click on HUD verification, and we see a pop-up. Again, we'll just want to make sure that we're updating the information correctly. So in this case, my client is reporting that they do not actually have an alcohol use disorder, and that information is not correct. So we'll go ahead and update that information. So we'll identify the record for alcohol use disorder. We'll click the pencil icon to the left. And as we see, all the fields in green have been completed. Again, we're not going to change data that's already present. We only fill out blank fields. So we're just ending this record and saying this information is no longer accurate as of the day before our update. Again, our update is up top as of 10/10/2024, and we'll do the end date of 10/9/2024 instead. So we'll save that, and luckily we don't have to do multiple records, which is fantastic. So we'll just toggle this to no, and that's perfect. But the client is now saying instead that they have a mental health disorder. So we'll identify that record. It's currently a no. We want it to be a yes. So we'll click the pencil icon to the left. And again, we're not going to update fields that are already present. We'll only update blank fields. So we're not going to change the disability determination, and we're not going to change the start date. We're going to put the end date as the day before the review date, which is that 10/10/2024. So 10/9 is 1 day before. And in this case, we won't actually fill out this field either because it says if yes, expected. In this case, the disability determination is no, so this field is not applicable for this record. And we're not going to change this no to a yes because that data is already present and we don't touch data that's already present. We'll click Save. And we have it toggled to incomplete, which is fantastic. So now we'll go ahead and select yes. In this case, we will get an additional pop-up saying that the client is reporting, self-reporting, they have a mental health disorder as of 10/10/2024, and we just ask if yes, is it expected to be of long continued indefinite duration. There are different and other ways to ask this question to the client. This is just the wording in Service Point, and our training on PDEs has a better wording for this to give to the client. In this case, the client's reporting yes, and we'll click Save. Now that we see all information is updated, we'll click Save and Exit. So we have one final field, a couple final fields, highest level of education, as well as survivor of domestic violence. Let's jump into the PowerPoint and take a look at that. There's a series of 3 questions at the end of the PDE assessment. It may be called the Universal Data Entry Assessment or Universal Update Assessment or Program Data Element Assessment, but it's the assessment with the sub-assessments as well as the domestic violence questions. These questions can be updated at interim updates. We'll want to select the answer that's most appropriate. So if it was previously within the past 3 months, for if yes, when experience occurred, and that answer has changed, needs to be corrected, you can change that by just changing the drop-down selection. It's just important to note that values can change over time. This is a much simpler process than with the sub-assessments. This is just selecting whatever is appropriate and accurate as of the time. So I'll jump into Service Point and take a quick look at what that looks like. And so we'll go and make sure that this is answered correctly. Now, in this case, these should have been answered at entry. So it looks like the information wasn't filled out. So we'll answer it here. And we'll just complete those answers. Now, if this information was already present before, you would just simply go ahead, and if the answer was changed or different, you go ahead and say that it is a yes instead. And so the domestic violence questions are just simply a matter of selecting the most appropriate answer if that information or those values have changed at the client's interim update. Once that interim update is complete, you click Save and Exit. We click Exit once again, and we now see that there has been one interim update recorded on the client's record. So we have one more piece to go over, which is the annual assessment. We saw that briefly at the beginning of the video, and this will let us know more about that. So let's jump into the PowerPoint presentation and learn more about annual assessments. Now, the annual assessment is really just an interim update, but on an annual basis. So don't let the language confuse you. The annual assessment has the same updates, the same information, the same process, the same button clicks as an interim update. The only difference is it occurs on the anniversary date of the head of household. So, as it says, this must be complete for project stays more than 365 days. This is in housing projects, shelter projects, transitional housing projects, safe havens. Now, most shelter stayers won't be in projects for that long. We do see it in transitional housing, but this is especially common for permanent supportive housing projects. But regardless of the project type, if your client is in that project for 365 days or more, an annual assessment should be completed. Now, the annual assessment date will be the same date for the whole household, and it will be based on the head of household's record. And that also has to be within 30 days of the head of household's anniversary. So on the screen, we have a client. We have 5 clients in the family, and we see the client number 1 is the head of household with an entry date of 9/30/2023. We have a few other clients who've entered. Another one entered in the same day, but other clients entered in January and February of the following year. Now, when considering the annual assessment, every client in this household will have the same annual assessment timeframe and date. So we'll want to first find out who the head of household is. So we see the head of household by the arrow. Their annual assessment, their entry date is 9/30/2024. So the whole household's annual assessment will be based on that 9/30/2024 date, regardless of when they enrolled in the project. Now, when recording this annual assessment, it has to be within 30 days after or before the head of household's anniversary date. So in this case, if we go 30 days back, we want the annual assessment to be between September 1st, and if we go 30 days forward, October 30th. So we want to make sure that the annual assessment is within that range to record that properly. And that would get us a correct annual assessment update. Now again, the annual assessment is just a language change. It's just an interim update occurring at an annual basis. All the buttons, the processes, and everything else is the same. We'll take a look in Service Point, see what that looks like. just to show you where those buttons are. But in terms of the actual updates themselves, there is no difference. All right, we're now back on the training site. And so we see our client's enrollment is on 10/1/2024. So we're going to pretend that it's actually 1 year later in 2025, just to show what an annual assessment looks like. The process is the same. It's like an interim update. We'll click that interim update icon. We'll click add interim review, and we'll click annual assessment. Now, in this case, the annual assessment just has to be within 30 days of the client's anniversary date. So I do see the client did enroll in the project, or I do remember, on October 1st, 2024. So October 1st is their anniversary date. And I just want to check to make sure, is October 23rd within 30 days of October 1st? It is indeed. So we'll just click save and continue. And this is the exact same assessment as before. And we see the previous information. We added the $800 ourselves, all those previous updates to the record. So the process for updating the information for the annual assessment is exactly the same as we just trained for interim updates. The only difference is it's just a required update for clients. Now, this annual assessment should be recorded even if no information changes. So in this case, in this scenario, I'm going to say I reviewed all this information with my clients and nothing actually changed. I'm just going to go ahead and review it, make no changes, and click Save and Exit. And that makes sure that I have completed the required annual assessment, which you would do even if there are no changes to the client's record. For interim updates, you would only make those updates as necessary for legitimate changes. But since the annual assessment is a required piece for project stayers of more than 365 days, we'll make sure that's recorded even if nothing on the record changes itself. That completes our updates and our training on interim updates as well as the annual assessment. We really appreciate your time and we hope you have a good rest of your training.